So as I'm doing research into our American Indigenous heritage, I've noticed that they will kind of use Negro to describe us, despite the fact that we did not come from Africa, right? But Negro is used a lot of times in like older texts that, as far as we know, have not been revised or changed without public knowledge. So the difference between a Negro and an Indian. A Negro is a person of African descent or heritage. They're usually called a Negro because they have very dark skin tones and they were forcibly taken from Africa to the Americas, and very few survived that journey. An Indian is an American descendant or someone of American heritage. They have various copper colored skin tones, so they don't all just look one way. Okay, we all don't look one way today as bronze people. Okay, every bronze person does not have huge thick lips and a huge thick nose, and you know this. We already have different color copper skin tones, and we have various hair textures. We have them today and we had them back then. We were already in the Americas. If we were taken anywhere, we were taken to other parts of the Americas to work, or we fled into different parts, or we were shipped to different other countries. So as Dane Calloway and other people over on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and myself have pointed out, the transatlantic slave trade did not happen the way we were told. Okay? Now, considering the fact that you couldn't choose your own race until the 1960s, your great-grandparents or great-great-great-grandparents or so on and so forth could be killed if you identified as Indian to them. So if they came to you and they said, okay, you're checkmarked as a Negro, and you said, no, I am an American Indian, my mother and my father are in this Indian tribe, they could literally kill you. Because what is a marshal? A U.S. Marshal is a policy enforcer, not a law enforcement, because this country does not operate on real laws. They have rules and policies. Okay? So that means they're going to be carrying a gun. So during this time, quote unquote, slavery, which didn't happen as we were told was going on. So knowing what we know about how vicious these people were back then, why wouldn't they lie about who was an Indian versus a Negro based on how light or darker skin was? So if to them you were considered darker skin with coarse textured hair, maybe a thick nose and lips, they call you a Negro even though you have no ancestry or heritage from Africa at all. They just lie and put Negro on the census by your name. And if you were of a lighter skinned complexion with maybe thinner hair or wavier hair, they would put you as an Indian. And if you were in between, maybe if you were a lighter skin with thick coarse hair, they probably put you as a Negro too. Even though none of those people who I described, who vary in skin tone and hair texture, ever came from Africa. So if we go back and we read here what a personal, okay, notice that word personal. So that is subjective. That's not objective. So the census takers were just looking at people and making a subjective determination on what race they were. So Negro says a person of mixed white and Negro blood should be returned as a Negro no matter how small the percentage of Negro blood. Both black and mulatto persons are to be returned as Negroes without distinction. A person of mixed Indian and Negro blood should be returned a Negro unless the Indian blood predominates and the status as an Indian is generally accepted in the community. Okay, that's extremely vague, and that gives no real context as to the ancestry of these people. Also, notice they didn't even talk about skin tone. So you're not even going based off of what somebody looks like, really, because they're not giving a description to the census takers about, hey, if this person is this skin tone or this dark color or light color, whatever, this is what they're classified as. They didn't do that. So they can just go around and be like, you're a Negro, you're white, you're Indian, and who's going to stop them? Real question, who's going to stop them? Anybody try to do it could be killed, quite literally. And I found this as well. On the website, freeafricanamericans.com, they talk about, and I underlined it here, free Indians blended into the free African American communities. They did not form their own separate communities. How exactly is this possible? If we are talking about the Mongoloid Native Americans or Indians who look like how they look today, how could they possibly blend in with so-called African Americans who were not called that at the time, by the way? So this is already suspect that we already got to take this website with a grain of salt. Okay? We can't just take it at face value. But what? If these people do not all look the same or similar, how could you have possibly blended in? And why would you not form your own separate community if you already had one previously, which would have been their tribe, right? Or if you already have one. because they're free Indians. Why mingle with strangers who don't really share a culture with you because they tell us we came from Africa? So what kind of culture will we share with the Indians? Because if we were free and they were free, then you can't say, well, we shared, the harshness of slavery, because neither of us were enslaved. So how are you sharing a culture with these people? That's because they're really the same people. The free Indians and the so-called African American, the free African Americans that they were talking about are the same people. They just classify the darker ones as Negro and the lighter ones as Indian.